plodding along through the month of November, moving towards Thanksgiving, one of my favorite times of year. The sermon series for this month is Church on Monday, really just about being the church rather than just attending church or attending assemblies. Sunday, I preached a message from First Thessalonians chapter 5, come over to our place. And it was really about hospitality and building relationships, taking the initiative, um, taking risks, and being willing to sacrifice in order to be the church. So, Russ, help us dig a little deeper along these lines.
Well, your main text on Sunday was First Thessalonians 5. If we dig into verse 11, I'll just reread that verse. Wherefore comfort yourselves together and edify one another, even as also you do. That Greek word for edify, which means build up, it's an architectural term. It's to do with building, with creating, with good foundations and walls and things. And effectively, that kind of highlights the fact when you talk about that in the church, that we're the bricks and mortar of the church, the people. Like you said on Sunday, we call our building a church, but the church biblically is us. And I was thinking, when we do this building up to people in the church, we tend to think of it as just for their benefit, their personal walk with Christ. But I think we need to do it with also a view to the fact that, we're sharpening a tool that's essential to the overall mission of the church. We're not just improving their walk, we're helping them be part of the church so they can go edify others, etc. I mean, 2 Corinthians 1, 3-4 basically tells us that, in God's edification of us, in his comforting and building up of us, he's also training us how to do the same for others. So what should we do with this information? Certainly, we shouldn't back away from comforting others. That's 1 Thessalonians 5:11 again. We shouldn't back away from, sharing every good thing with others. That's 1 John 3:17. But that's the easy stuff. We also shouldn't back away from another duty of love, which is correction. But there are biblical levels as well as biblical methods and postures we must adhere to do it properly. Otherwise, don't do it. Some of the levels, looking at some of the words used in their Greek counterparts, for example, one level is to encourage. That's the word parakaleo in Greek, which means to call near, to comfort, or to urge. To address discouragement or minor slip-ups. Again, 1 Thessalonians 5:11. Then there's a level admonish, which is a Greek word nothetio, which means to put in mind, to warn, to caution. And then finally, there's the level which is basically translated rebuke, which is elegcho in the Greek, which means to expose, convict, or convince. And this would be, addressing serious unrepentant sin, for example, like in Titus 1:13. The method, it has to be as Jesus prescribed. For example, and this isn't the only example, Matthew 18:15-17 is a good example of the method. The goal has always got to be reconciliation. I've noticed in the past you've always highlighted that, and I think that's a great thing to do. But it's got to be done through a non-enabling love. And we've got to resolve to do it at the lowest level possible in the process. Now, Matthew 18, as you're familiar, has like those three different levels. There's private, then there's semi-private, and then there's communal. Our goal should always be to reconcile at the earliest level we can. And the posture. Galatians 6:1. Brothers, if a man be overtaken in a fault, you which is spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Break this down to bluntness. If you can't be guided by the Spirit, find someone else. If you can't be meek and humble, find someone else. If you can't protect yourself from being infected by what you're trying to address, find someone who can. It's got to be done by someone who fits all three. Again, I kind of feel negative bringing this stuff up because I know I brought it up before, but I mean, for example, Pastor, I mean, you're a guard. I'm not a gardener. You're a gardener. You work with peach trees. To use an analogy, that work, the tree requires sunlight, the tree requires water, the tree requires ground with good soil that's fertile with all the nutrients it needs, etc., etc. But it doesn't stop there. The tree requires cutting off dead branches, cutting off dead leaves, cutting off the dead weight. When it's sick, it needs to be treated. Um, you can't do one without the other, or you end up with a tree growing that ends up messy with lots of dead branches or diseased branches, which are sucking the energy out of the tree that could be going to growing the good fruit. Um, so for our grace group verses, I thought we'd take a look at 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3 to 7. Paul speaks about how God's comforting of him trains him to comfort others. And there's our 5 questions. How would you explain these verses in your own words? What do they tell us about God? What do they tell us about people? How can you apply these words to your life, and who are you going to tell?
A lot of substance today, Russ. Very good stuff. Very important. Very needed in the church. This is, in my opinion, spiritual meat that the church needs,
Mm,
and we'll be strong if we take it and put it into practice. I don't like it. I was sitting here listening to you. Why do I not like this? And it's because if I'm going to hold you accountable, that means you're going to hold me accountable.
mhm,
I got to behave, and I don't want to behave. I just want to do whatever I want to do, and that's awful. But that's my main holdback. I really believe on why I don't want to call people on the carpet for obvious missteps. So, God help us. Good thoughts. Appreciate that.